Number 1. Alyssa Bustamante. She was 15, barely old enough to drive. Her dark hair and braces could have belonged to any Midwestern teenager. Yet, on October 21, 2009, Alyssa Bustamante led her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, down a wooded path behind their Missouri homes, promising a surprise. Days earlier, she had carved 2 shallow graves with a shovel. When Elizabeth stepped into the trees, she had no idea her friend had packed a knife. Bustamante's attack was swift and sadistic. She strangled the child, slit her throat, and stabbed her multiple times. She hid the body beneath leaves and went to a church dance, as if nothing had happened. In her journal, she scrawled a chilling confession. "I just fucking killed someone. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the 'oh my god, I can't do this' feeling, it's pretty enjoyable." She later admitted she wanted to know what it felt like to kill. The thrill outweighed empathy. A desperate search for Elizabeth mobilized neighbors and police. Within 2 days, officers discovered the poorly concealed grave. Confronted by investigators, Bustamante led them to the body and confessed. She was charged as an adult with first-degree murder, but in January 2012, she took a plea deal and admitted guilt to second-degree murder and armed criminal action. At her February sentencing, she faced Elizabeth's family. Voice shaking, she told them, "I'm extremely, very sorry. If I could give my life to get her back, I would." The apology did little to ease a community's rage. Prosecutor Mark Richardson called her a truly evil individual who strangled and stabbed an innocent child simply for the thrill of it. Judge Patricia Joyce sentenced Bustamante to life in prison with the possibility of parole for the murder, plus a consecutive 30-year term for using a knife. Because she was a minor at the time, she must serve at least 35 years before parole is even possible. She is currently incarcerated at Chillicothe Correctional Center. Her personal struggles, depression, a prior suicide attempt, and a troubled family background did not outweigh the premeditation. She dug graves in advance, invited her little sister to bring Elizabeth, and wrote about the murder as if it were an experiment. Bustamante's case ignited debate over juvenile sentencing and mental health. Some argued she was a deeply disturbed child. Others saw her as a manipulative killer who deserved adult punishment. Missouri later amended its parole laws, but she was denied release in 2024. She will be in her 50s before another hearing. A teenager's morbid curiosity stole a child's future and scarred a family forever. Yet the justice system ensured that thrill-seeking turned into decades behind bars. Number 2. Michael Hernandez. He was only 14, a straight-A student at Southwood Middle School in Palmetto Bay, Florida. Yet in his notebooks, he scrawled phrases like, "will become a serial killer," and drew a hanging man. He studied Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, listened to music glorifying violence, and believed God had chosen him to cleanse the planet. He made lists of victims, including his sister and 2 close friends, and wrote detailed instructions. Be quick, remove all blood, make sure they are dead. He even downloaded bomb recipes and sketched swastikas with white power. Michael Hernandez's diary was not the journal of a typical teenager. It was a blueprint for murder. On February 2, 2004, he tried to lure one of his friends into a bathroom stall at school. The boy balked and walked away. The next morning, he told another classmate, 14-year-old Jamie Guff, that he had a surprise to show him. Jaime followed him into the handicapped stall. That was when Hernandez attacked. He pulled a knife from a hidden pocket in his backpack and stabbed his friend more than 40 times, slashing his throat. He stuffed the weapon back into the backpack's secret compartment, cleaned up, and walked to computer class, acting as if nothing had happened. He went to class as if he had just thrown a piece of trash away. Prosecutor Gail Levine later said. Another student discovered Jaime's body. A teacher noticed blood on Hernandez's clothes. Under interrogation, Hernandez confessed. He admitted he had planned to kill 2 friends and then his own sister. He had practiced by stabbing a notebook, wrote reminders to stay calm and to kill anyone else who entered the bathroom. The first target refused to enter the stall, so Hernandez carried out his plan on Jaime. He told detectives he was on a mission and felt as though a higher power wanted him to do it. At his 2008 trial, Hernandez pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but jurors rejected the defense. They heard testimony that he kept a journal of people he wanted to kill and had a fascination with serial killers. He was convicted of first-degree murder and armed robbery and received a mandatory life sentence. Then, in 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled automatic life sentences for juveniles unconstitutional. Hernandez asked for a new hearing. At the 2015 resentencing, friend Andre Martin testified that Hernandez had told him he wanted to become a serial killer and thought it would be cool to kill. Hernandez's father took the stand, but was questioned about his son's obsession and about contraband shanks found in Michael's cell. Jaime Goff's parents wrote a letter forgiving him spiritually, but begging the judge not to free him. Judge John Schlesinger reimposed the life sentence, but, as required by law, allowed Hernandez to seek parole after 25 years. An appeals court later upheld the term, noting that Hernandez still fixated on violent music and imagery and remained committed to his original fantasies. He would be eligible for review in 2029. In the meantime, he studied in prison and worked as a law clerk, but the darkness never left him. On April 14, 2021, at age 31, he died of natural causes in a Florida prison. Michael Hernandez's case exposed a chilling reality. A smart, seemingly normal teenager meticulously planned to become a serial killer. He wrote about mass kidnapping for New World and left behind instructions on how to erase his victim's blood. His fantasy ended with the murder of a friend, the grief of a family, and his own life spent behind bars. The courts wrestled with how to punish a child who commits such an adult crime, balancing accountability with the Supreme Court's mandate to treat juvenile offenders differently. For Jaime Goff's parents, however, the questions were simpler. Their son was buried at 14, and they felt Hernandez never truly showed remorse. In the end, the self-proclaimed future serial killer died never having left prison. A grim reminder that fascination with violence can spiral into real-world horror. Number 3. T.J. Lane. On a chilly Monday morning in February 2012, students at Chardon High School in Ohio were huddled around tables in the cafeteria. Among them was a lanky 17-year-old in a blue hoodie and white t-shirt. Thomas T.J. Lane didn't attend Chardon. He caught a bus there to an alternative school for teens with academic or behavioral problems. He waited with a group of kids from the Auburn Career Center, some of whom he had known since middle school. As the clock neared 7:30 a.m., Lane drew a .22 caliber Ruger Mk3 handgun he had stolen from his uncle. Without saying a word, he fired 10 rounds at the table. Daniel Parmertor, 16, Demetrius Hewlin, 16, and Russell King Jr., 17, slumped over, mortally wounded. Nick Walsack, 18, was shot multiple times and left paralyzed. Nate Muller and Joy Rickers sustained lesser injuries. Lane dropped the gun, fled the school, and was arrested less than a mile away. The attack appeared motiveless. Investigators learned Lane had once been threatened by King and had started weightlifting to prepare to fight him, but he later told officers he didn't know why he had shot the teens. Friends described him as a very normal teenage boy who kept to himself. Others said he came from a broken home and sometimes seemed sad. A chilling Facebook post from the previous December ended with the words, "Die, all of you," though Lane claimed it was just a writing assignment. Authorities found he had minor juvenile offenses on his record, but nothing that predicted a massacre. Lane's demeanor after the shooting was as shocking as the attack itself. In March 2013, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder and related charges. At his sentencing, he entered wearing a blue dress shirt, then calmly unbuttoned it to reveal a white t-shirt scrawled with the word "killer," similar to the shirt he wore during the shooting. When victims' family members addressed the court, Lane smirked and laughed. Given a chance to speak, he looked at the grieving parents and said, "This hand that pulled the trigger that killed your sons now masturbates to the memory. Fuck all of you," while raising his middle finger. Judge David Furry called him extremely dangerous and said the killings were cold and calculated. He sentenced Lane to 3 consecutive life terms with no possibility of parole, plus 37 years. Lane continued to show contempt for society. In September 2014, he escaped from Allen Oakwood Correctional Institution with 2 other inmates by using a makeshift ladder to scale a fence. Residents of Chardon panicked, and police stood guard outside the victims' homes. Within 6 hours, Lane was captured less than 100 yards from the prison. Officials transferred him to a supermax facility where he spends 23 hours a day in his cell. There will be no parole hearing. His sentence is as final as the lives he took. The Chardon shooting reignited debates about school safety, the warning signs of teenage violence, and how the justice system should handle young killers. Lane's case is notable not only for the random brutality of the attack, but for his chilling indifference. He offered no explanation, and his only public statements were taunts. The victims' families continue to grieve the loss of promising young lives, while the community remembers a day when a boy who seemed quiet and harmless walked into school and turned it into a crime scene. TJ Lane will spend the rest of his life behind bars, a sobering reminder that sometimes evil wears the face of a teenager. Number 4. Vincent Parker. He was the sort of teenager parents brag about. 16-year-old Vincent Parker played tennis, excelled in art, and maintained honor roll grades at Norview High School in Norfolk, Virginia. He wanted to become a police officer. On December 19, 2013, he left school early and drove home while his father was still at work. It was the week before Christmas, but something sinister was about to happen. As his mother, Carol, stepped out of an upstairs bathroom, Vincent attacked her with pepper spray. He stabbed her in the eye and bludgeoned her head and face with a crowbar and a baseball bat, striking her at least 25 times. Medical examiners later counted 25 distinct smashes and stabs to her neck, face, and head. He used multiple knives, up to 8 according to prosecutors, and only stopped when she stopped breathing. When his father, Wayne, returned home, Vincent struck him with the crowbar and stabbed him repeatedly. Despite his injuries, Wayne managed to call 911 and tell police what happened before dying at the hospital. 5 bloody knives, the bat and the crowbar were recovered at the scene. Initially, Vincent tried to claim self-defense but quickly confessed. He told detectives there had been no argument with his mother. Instead, he said he just remembered getting mad, adding that his anger came from my dad taking away my iPod and stuff. To investigators and reporters, he repeated, "It's all from my dad. All this stuff like my dad taking away my iPod and stuff." His family was stunned. His grandfather called him a smart young man and said he had no idea what caused the violence. Court-ordered psychiatric evaluations determined he was sane and intelligent. In May 2014, Vincent Parker pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder in adult court. He was sentenced to 2 40-year terms, with all but 21 years and 10 months suspended. He will remain in juvenile detention until he turns 21, then be transferred to a state penitentiary. His maternal uncle lunged at him during the sentencing hearing. Deputies had to restrain the grieving relative. After the sentence, Vincent's grandfather said he forgave his grandson, but hoped he would get counseling and ask God to forgive him for what he did. The case baffled psychologists and criminologists. A well-behaved, academically successful teenager murdered his parents over punishments most kids would consider routine. Prosecutors said the killings were premeditated. Vincent left school, armed himself with pepper spray, knives, a bat, and a crowbar, and attacked without provocation. The brutality, 25 blows to his mother's head and multiple stab wounds to his father, suggested simmering rage beneath the honor student exterior. Vincent's statement about losing his iPod hints at a deeper resentment toward discipline and a possible inability to handle anger. The crime left extended family members grappling with grief and forgiveness, and it raised haunting questions about how unchecked anger and entitlement can culminate in unimaginable violence. Number 5. Nehemiah Griego. He was 15 and homeschooled, the son of a former gang member turned pastor in South Valley, New Mexico. Nehemiah Griego had grown up learning to shoot on the family's property. But on the night of January 19, 2013, he took those lessons and turned them on those closest to him. Just after midnight, he crept into his parents' bedroom and shot his sleeping mother, Sarah, with a .22 caliber rifle. He then woke his 9-year-old brother, Zephaniah, showed him their mother's body, and shot him too. His little sisters, Jael, 5, and Angelina, 2, were next. He shot them each in the head as they slept. Then, he waited. When his father, Greg, returned from an overnight shift at a homeless shelter, Nehemiah ambushed him and shot him 4 times. 5 members of the Griego family lay dead. What happened next was even more chilling. Nehemiah reloaded the family's rifles, packed them into the van, and planned to drive to a Walmart on Guns Across America Day to shoot strangers until police killed him. He even thought about killing his 12-year-old girlfriend's parents. Before leaving, he texted his girlfriend a photo of his dead mother. Instead of carrying out the rest of his plan, he spent most of the day with her. That evening, he went to Calvary Church, where his father had been a pastor, and calmly told a security officer that his family was dead. Authorities later said he had been planning the murders for at least a week. He told investigators he was angry at his mother and had been thinking about killing himself and others. Prosecutors described the attack as cold-blooded. He played with his brother after killing their mother and then murdered him, snapping a photo of the bodies. Nehemiah pleaded guilty in 2015 to 2 counts of second-degree murder for his parents and 3 counts of child abuse resulting in death for his siblings. Initially, a children's court judge said he was amenable to treatment, but after public outrage and appeals, a different judge ruled he was not. In 2019, he was sentenced as an adult to 3 concurrent life sentences, plus 2 7-year terms. Under New Mexico law, he must serve at least 30 years before he can even request parole, so he will be in his early 50s before any chance of release. Griego's lawyers argued he suffered trauma and mental illness. He had been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder and, according to defense witnesses, grew up in an abusive and isolating home. But prosecutors emphasized the deliberate nature of the killings. He retrieved guns from a closet, shot each victim in the head, reloaded the weapons, and planned a public massacre. To this day, the crime stuns those who hear it. A teenage boy murdered his parents and 3 young siblings in their sleep, then calmly considered extending the bloodshed to strangers. His case raises painful questions about juvenile justice and mental health. Can a 15-year-old who carries out such a calculated attack ever be rehabilitated? Or, as the court ultimately decided, does protecting society require putting him away for life? Nehemiah Griego now sits in a New Mexico prison, decades away from any hope of freedom. His family's home, once filled with 10 children, was the scene of an unfathomable tragedy, a reminder that sometimes the most shocking violence comes not from strangers, but from within a family. Number 6. Cassandra, Bjorge, and Johnny Ryder. They were teenagers from suburban Georgia, not Missouri, but their crime shocked the country in 2017. 17-year-old Cassandra Bjorge and her 19-year-old boyfriend Johnny Hero Ryder looked like a normal couple. They joked with friends and posted selfies, but behind the scenes, they were plotting to kill the people who had raised Cassandra, her grandparents Randall and Wendy Bjorge. Late one April night, they broke into the Bjorge home with weapons including a tire iron, hammer, baseball bat, and knives. Johnny struck Randall first, then Cassandra dragged her grandmother into the bedroom and duct-taped her. Together, they stabbed and bludgeoned the elderly couple to death. Afterwards, they caulked the doors to keep the smell inside and spent several days smoking marijuana and partying with friends while the bodies decomposed upstairs. Detectives later discovered the murders were part of a broader plan. Bjorge and Ryder discussed killing several other relatives, including Ryder's family and Cassandra's mother. They even attacked Ryder's sister and her boyfriend. She escaped and alerted police, leading to their arrest. In February 2018, the pair pleaded guilty to the murders. Ryder stood before the judge and called his own actions abominable and evil, asking for forgiveness. Cassandra remained silent. Each received 2 life sentences with the possibility of parole after 30 years. The case raises painful questions. What drives seemingly ordinary teens to such brutality? Investigators said the pair were angry with Cassandra's grandparents for trying to impose curfews and discipline. Instead of talking it through, they planned a massacre. They plotted to kill other relatives and partied next to the corpses. The judge hoped the sentences would send a message that such premeditated savagery cannot be excused by youth. Years later, the case remains a chilling reminder that deadly violence can brew in suburban homes and that teenagers, too, can make monstrous choices. Number 7. Aiden Fucci. On a day meant to celebrate mothers, a 14-year-old boy took a girl who might have been a mother someday and left her in the dirt. It was Mother's Day 2021 when Aiden Fucci texted 13-year-old Tristan Bailey from their St. Johns County neighborhood. He suggested sneaking out late at night. What she didn't know was that he had been telling friends he planned to drag someone into the woods and stab them. He bragged he would act innocent, keep killing, and run away. No one warned her. They were caught on a home security camera walking toward a cul-de-sac around 1:45 a.m. on May 9th. 2 hours later, the same camera recorded a lone figure jogging back, holding a pair of shoes. In that short window, Fucci stabbed Tristan 114 times. At least 49 wounds were on her hands, arms, and head, defensive injuries that showed she fought back. Investigators later found the broken tip of his knife embedded in her skull. He left her body in the woods at the end of the street. Then came an even colder twist. While detectives questioned him, Fucci snapped a selfie in the back of a squad car and posted it on Snapchat with the caption, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristan lately?" As officers searched his house, they discovered his mother, Crystal Smith, on surveillance footage, retrieving a pair of blue jeans, scrubbing them in a bathroom sink, and putting them back. Tests later showed blood in the drain and on the jeans. She was arrested for evidence tampering. What followed shocked a community. State Attorney R.J. Larisa revealed that Fucci had told friends he wanted to kill someone to see what it felt like. Because of the brutality, 114 stab wounds, a planned ambush, prosecutors moved his case to adult court. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in February 2023. At his March sentencing, Circuit Judge R. Lee Smith said there was no motive. The killing wasn't about jealousy or rage, but about satisfying Fucci's own urge to experience murder. He noted Tristan suffered a painful and horrifying death at the hands of someone she trusted. In court, Tristan's sister Alexis dropped 114 aqua stones into a glass jar, one for each stab wound. Her mother, Stacy, told the judge, "Please do not for 1 second think that he could be rehabilitated. He is beyond saving." Fucci read a brief apology. "I'm sorry for the Bailey family and my family." He also wrote a letter to the court saying he was sorry for the pain he caused. Judge Smith sentenced him to life in prison, with a review after 25 years due to his age. This tragedy raises haunting questions. A teenager fantasized about murder, told his peers, and still carried out his plan. His own mother tried to erase the evidence. The crime wasn't driven by passion or revenge. It was driven by curiosity. The case shows the importance of taking threats seriously and monitoring what young people say and do. Tristan Bailey's family turned their grief into a call for change, reminding us that silence can be deadly and that any hint of violence should be a warning. Number 8. Nicholas Cruz. On Valentine's Day 2018, students and staff at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, were thinking about candy and cards. What happened next stunned the country. A 19-year-old former student had very different plans. Nicholas Cruz, orphaned and expelled, ordered an Uber and arrived at the campus at 2:19 p.m., carrying a rifle case and a backpack. He blended in with the teenagers milling about before dismissal. Inside his bag was a legally purchased AR-15 rifle and extra magazines. A security monitor noticed him walking purposefully toward Building 12, but did not call a lockdown. Within minutes, the fire alarm would blare and the school's hallways would turn into a killing ground. Cruz assembled the rifle in a stairwell and encountered a student, Christopher McKenna. "You'd better get out of here. Something bad's about to happen," he warned. McKenna ran. Cruz stepped into the first-floor hallway and began firing. He killed 3 students within seconds. He then shot through windows of closed classroom doors, killing 6 more students and 2 staff members and wounding 13. The gunshots set off the fire alarm, causing confusion because there had been a drill earlier that day. Cruz moved upstairs, killing 5 students and another staff member on the 3rd floor before his rifle malfunctioned. In all, he fired 139 rounds. Teachers Aaron Feiss and Chris Hickson died trying to protect students. Junior ROTC member Peter Wang held a door open so others could escape and was shot. 14 of the 17 dead were teenagers. 3 were faculty. Another 18 people were wounded. Cruz dropped his rifle, blended into the fleeing crowd, and left the building. He strolled to a fast food restaurant, stopped by a mall to buy a drink, then walked through neighborhoods. Police arrested him an hour later in nearby Coral Springs. In a confession, he told officers he had brought extra magazines in his backpack. He later told a psychologist he chose Valentine's Day because he felt unloved. In the months after the shooting, investigators discovered a trail of missed warnings. The Broward County Sheriff's Office had received at least 45 calls about Cruz or his family since 2008, including tips that he had threatened to shoot up the school and was collecting knives and guns. In September 2017, someone using the screen name Nicholas Cruz commented on YouTube, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." The FBI was alerted, but did not trace the user. 5 weeks before the attack, a caller warned the FBI that Cruz owned guns, wanted to kill people, and might conduct a school shooting. The information was never forwarded to the Miami field office. Cruz had also been investigated for cutting his arms and talking about buying a gun. School officials moved him between 6 campuses in 3 years to manage his behavioral problems and eventually expelled him. Despite these red flags, he legally purchased the AR-15 in February 2017. On social media, he posted violent images and carved swastikas into his ammunition magazines. Cruz pleaded guilty in October 2021 to 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. At his sentencing trial in 2022, prosecutors presented his Google searches, including how to become a school shooter, while defense attorneys argued he suffered from brain damage and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. The jury unanimously agreed that the aggravating factors were proven but deadlocked on imposing the death penalty, resulting in a recommendation of life without parole. Many families of the victims expressed outrage at the decision. Judge Elizabeth Scherer sentenced Cruz to 34 consecutive life sentences, one for each person he killed or wounded. Governor Ron DeSantis later signed a bill allowing death sentences with an 8-4 jury vote, citing this case as justification. In 2024, Cruz settled a civil lawsuit with survivor Anthony Borges, giving Borges rights to his name so he can never profit from the crime, and agreed to donate his brain to science. The Parkland massacre fueled national debates about gun control, mental health, and the responsibility to act on warnings. Teachers were praised for heroism, while law enforcement response and the lack of lockdown procedures were heavily criticized. The fact that a young man known for violent threats could legally buy an AR-15 and walk into a school has spurred legislative changes. Students who survived went on to lead the March for Our Lives movement, demanding stricter gun laws. Yet the pain remains for families who lost children and spouses. The bright smiles of Alyssa Alhadeff, Martin Duke, Meadow Pollock, and the other victims are now memorials. The missed red flags prompt a haunting question. If so many people saw danger coming, why wasn't it stopped? Number 9. Ethan Crumbley. It was almost lunchtime on November 30th, 2021 at Oxford High School in Michigan. Students were changing classes when a 15-year-old sophomore slipped into a bathroom with a backpack. Minutes earlier, he had been in the counselor's office with his parents after a teacher found a chilling drawing on his math worksheet, a gun pointing at the words, "The thoughts won't stop. Help me," and blood everywhere. School officials urged Jennifer and James Crumbley to get counseling for their son within 48 hours. They refused to take him home, did not mention that they had bought him a Sig Sauer 9mm pistol 4 days earlier, and left the school. 12 minutes later, Jennifer texted him, "Don't do it." It was too late. Surveillance footage shows Ethan Crumbley emerging from the bathroom with the handgun and opening fire in the hallway. He fired at students as they fled, then walked methodically down the corridor, shooting into classrooms at those who couldn't escape. Because teachers quickly locked doors and used barricades, he never entered a classroom. Madison Baldwin, 17, Tate Meyer, 16, and Hannah St. Juliana, 14, were killed on the spot. Tate was shot while trying to stop the gunman. A fourth student, Justin Schilling, 17, died the next day. 6 more students and a teacher were wounded. Police received hundreds of 911 calls starting at 12:51 p.m. Within 2 or 3 minutes of officers arriving, a school resource officer and another deputy arrested Crumbley without incident. He still had 7 rounds left and 2 magazines. 32 spent bullet casings were later recovered. The entire attack lasted about 5 minutes. Investigators soon uncovered a disturbing backstory. 4 days before the shooting, Crumbley's father bought the 9mm pistol with his son at a local gun store. His mother called it Ethan's new Christmas present on social media. Crumbley filmed videos the night before describing his plan and wrote in a journal about his desire to shoot up the school. The morning of the attack, a teacher had caught him searching for ammunition on his phone. His mother texted back, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught." Later, another teacher found the violent drawing with cries for help. Yet after the meeting, the school let him return to class. Prosecutor Karen McDonald later said school officials had legal grounds to search his backpack, but did not. Crumbley's parents left the building without securing their son or the gun. The legal aftermath was unprecedented. Crumbley was charged as an adult with terrorism causing death, 4 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, and multiple weapons charges. He pleaded guilty to all 24 counts in October 2022. In December 2023, Judge Kwame Rowe sentenced him to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 24 years, noting the extensive planning and deliberate execution of the attack. Before sentencing, Crumbley told the court, "I am a really bad person. I have done terrible things. Any sentence that the victims ask for, I ask that you do impose it on me." Rowe said Crumbley continued to walk through the school, picking and choosing who was going to die, calling his actions an execution and torture. In his ruling, he acknowledged the shooter's youth, but said it did not outweigh the severity of the crimes. As of April 2024, Crumbley has been moved to an adult prison. In 2025, the Michigan Court of Appeals denied his bid to withdraw his guilty plea and upheld the sentence. The case also marked the first time in U.S. history that parents of a mass school shooter were charged for their child's actions. Jennifer and James Crumbley were convicted of involuntary manslaughter for failing to secure the gun and ignoring warning signs, and in April 2024 were each sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. Prosecutors argued that responsible gun ownership could have prevented the tragedy. Meanwhile, lawsuits against the school district allege negligence for allowing a clearly troubled student to remain in class and failing to search his backpack. The Oxford shooting is a tragic example of how a chain of ignored warnings, disturbing texts about ghosts and demons, violent drawings screaming "help me," parents buying a gun for a troubled teen, school officials sending him back to class, can lead to irrevocable loss. 4 teenagers lost their lives and a small town was left traumatized. The case underscores that responding quickly to cries for help and securing firearms could mean the difference between life and death. Number 10. Willard Miller and Jeremy Goodale. They sat in her Spanish class like any other students, notebooks open, pencils ready, appearing to listen as she taught conjugations and vocabulary. But beneath their teenage facades, Willard Miller and Jeremy Goodale harbored a darkness that would soon turn their beloved teacher into a victim. On November 2nd, 2021, these two 16-year-olds would cross a line that would destroy multiple families and shock the quiet community of Fairfield, Iowa forever. Nehemiah Griego was everything a teacher should be. At 66 years old, the Spanish teacher at Fairfield High School was beloved by students and colleagues alike. She had dedicated her life to education, helping countless teenagers navigate not just the complexities of a foreign language, but the challenges of growing up. She took daily walks in Chautauqua Park to stay healthy and clear her mind, a routine that should have been peaceful and safe. That afternoon, Griego had met with Jeremy Goodale to discuss his poor performance in her Spanish class. She did what any caring educator would do, offering guidance and support to help him improve his grades. What she didn't know was that this act of academic responsibility would sign her death warrant. Miller was failing her class, and the bad grade threatened to affect his overall GPA and prevent him from participating in activities he valued. The plan that Miller and Goodale hatched was as calculated as it was brutal. They would follow their teacher to the park, where she took her daily walks, and murder her in cold blood. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of teenage rage. This was premeditated murder, carefully planned by 2 students who decided their teacher's life was worth less than a report card. On that November evening, as Griego walked her familiar path through Chautauqua Park, she had no idea she was being stalked. Miller and Goodale had followed her there, carrying a baseball bat and deadly intentions. What happened next would haunt investigators and the community for years to come. The two teenagers approached their teacher and began their savage attack. The brutality of what followed was beyond comprehension. Evidence shows both Miller and Goodale struck the 66-year-old teacher with the baseball bat, beating her to death in the place where she had come to find peace. The attack was so vicious that it left investigators struggling to understand how two teenagers could inflict such violence on someone who had tried to help them. After murdering their teacher, the two boys attempted to hide their crime. Graber's body was found hidden under a tarp, railroad ties, and a wheelbarrow in the park. The crude attempt to conceal the body showed the same lack of maturity and planning that had led them to believe they could get away with murder in the first place. When Graber failed to show up for work the next day, her ex-husband Paul reported her missing. This was completely out of character for the dedicated teacher who never missed school and always kept her commitments. The search began immediately, with the community rallying to find the woman who had given so much to their children. Her body was discovered in Chautauqua Park on November 3, 2021, just one day after the attack. The discovery sent shockwaves through Fairfield, a close-knit community where violent crime was virtually unknown. The idea that someone had murdered their beloved teacher in their safe neighborhood park was almost impossible to process. The investigation quickly focused on Miller and Goodale. Within days, both teenagers were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. They were charged as adults despite being only 16 years old at the time of the crime, reflecting the serious nature of their actions and the premeditated aspect of the murder. As details of the case emerged, the community struggled to understand how two of their own children could commit such a heinous act. These weren't troubled kids from broken homes or known troublemakers. They were students who sat in classrooms every day, who had families and friends, who seemed normal by every outward measure. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Prosecutors said that Miller and Goodale plotted to kill Graber because Miller was failing Spanish class, and the bad grade would prevent him from participating in school activities. A witness told police that items used during the crime were taken to one of the teens' homes, further cementing the case against them. Initially, there was discussion of one teen testifying against the other, as Jeremy Goodale was listed as a potential state witness against Willard Miller. But eventually, both teenagers accepted responsibility for their actions. In April 2023, both pleaded guilty to first-degree murder charges, admitting their role in the brutal killing of their teacher. The sentencing hearings brought the full weight of the tragedy into focus. Miller was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Goodale received life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. At their young ages, these sentences effectively meant they would spend most of their lives behind bars. The courtroom was filled with grief as the impact of their crime became clear. Nehemiah Griego's family spoke about losing a woman who had dedicated her life to helping others, only to be murdered by the very students she was trying to help. The senseless nature of the killing made their loss even more difficult to bear. Which case shook you the most? Which one do you think still hides unanswered questions? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. And if you want more true crime stories that are raw, real, and straight from the record, make sure to subscribe to Chalkline and hit that bell icon so you never miss a case. Because in this world, silence doesn't mean closure. It means there's still more to uncover.